In 1999, psychologists Daniel Simmons and Christopher Chabris conducted an experiment that seemed like a prank. They showed participants a short video of students passing a basketball around and gave them one task: count the passes. Simple, and halfway through the video, a person in a full gorilla suit strolls into the middle of the frame, faces the camera, beats their chest, and walks off. 9 seconds of gorilla. About half the viewers never saw it. Not barely noticed it, never saw it. When researchers rewound the tape, people accused them of switching videos. The study's actual title, I kid you not, is Gorillas in Our Midst, and what it proved is something quietly unsettling. You don't see what's in front of your eyes, you see what you're paying attention to. Anything else, a person standing right there, can simply fail to exist for you. Now, what if someone understood that about you and used it? What if a person could make themselves the gorilla, stand in the middle of your life, in plain sight, and arrange your attention so that it always slide past them? There's a character in Pillars of Eternity who does exactly that. She fights beside your party, she sleeps at the same campfires, and across the entire game, your companions almost never speak to her. She has no name. The game calls her the grieving mother, and she is the most honest thing I've ever seen a game say about what people do to themselves after the worst day of their life. When you meet her for the first time, she's nobody. A middle-aged woman at the edge of the village, stripping vegetables. The game's own narration says you are not sure she even knows you're there, which is funny in a dark way, because it's exactly backwards. She knows. You're the one who isn't supposed to. But your character is a watcher, someone who sees souls directly. The one pair of eyes in the world her trick doesn't work on. And the moment you actually look at her, something breaks open. You get pulled into a memory that isn't yours, a birth, at a strange tower deep in the forest. That tower was called the Briefing Bell. Years ago, she was the midwife there, and I want you to sit with what that job means in a place like this. A tiny village, cut off from everything. Every single person in it came into the world through her hands. She'd hold newborns up and read their souls. Tell the mother what kind of person this child will become. And here's the first crack in the story. Those readings were often invented. She told mothers what they wanted to hear. Not out of cruelty, out of a kind of compassion that doesn't ask permission first. Hold onto that instinct. It's about to burn her whole world down. Because then the children started being born empty. Across the Deerwood, a plague was beginning. The game calls it Waidwen's legacy. Babies born, breathing, moving, and hollow. Nobody behind the eyes. The hollow-born. But her village was so isolated that no one there knew it was happening everywhere. Which means, from where they stood, it would look like it started here, in the village. With this midwife. With her hands. So picture her standing in that tower, holding a soulless child, terrified of two things at once. That they'd blame her for it, and of what grieving parents, in the worst moment of their lives, might do to these empty children. And she had a tool nobody else had. She was a cipher. She could reach into minds.
I meant to soothe their pain, as I had done for so many mothers in the throes of labor. But my thoughts became a trap, a prison, for the village and for me.
She reached into the mother's mind and painted a healthy baby over the hollow one, the crying, the warmth, the little eyes that follow you, all of it an illusion woven directly into a grieving woman's head. And then another hollow child was born, and another, and she kept weaving. Here's the thing about a lie that big. It doesn't just trap the people who believe it,
I held their minds within mine. I shaped and guided them as long as I could. And with each passing day, each new birth, the strain grew. And the more I felt my control slipping, the more I focused my thoughts. Eventually, even I succumbed to the power of my own illusion. I'd woven the threads so tightly that I could no longer see through them.
Listen to that again. She could no longer see through her own illusion. She forgot her own lie was a lie. Think about how badly a mind must want out of reality to pull that on itself. And then one morning the whole thing shattered. The game delivers it in one sentence. And honestly, it's one of the most quietly horrifying sentences I've found in an RPG. A mother had died, her mind so focused on the care of her hollow-born child that she neglected even to feed herself. She starved. Inside a dream someone else was projecting into her head, caring for a child who could not need anything. A woman forgot that she needed things. And the woman whose entire life was bringing people safely into the world had now, by trying to shield everyone from grief, caused a death. There's a name for this specific kind of wound, and I only learned it recently. When soldiers come home broken, we assume it's fear, the explosions, the near misses, but researchers working with veterans kept finding something else underneath. What often actually breaks people isn't what was done to them, it's what they did, or failed to stop. When you cross your own deepest lines, even for good reasons, even in an impossible situation, something in your sense of who you are cracks. The clinicians call it moral injury. I'd call it what she has. The wound of good intentions. And you don't need a war to get one. There's a research on real midwives and delivery nurses who witnessed births go wrong. The literature literally calls them second victims. People whose whole identity is I bring life into the world safely, hitting a day where they couldn't. Now imagine that day never ends. Every birth for years. And the only tool you have makes it worse. So what did she do after the illusion broke? She ran, but not just out of the village, out of everyone's heads. She reached into the villagers' minds one last time and deleted herself. The woman who delivered their children, wiped like a name off a chalkboard. And then she did something I find generally harder to look at. She kept going. She wrapped the same erasure around herself, permanently. She calls it a caul, the membrane that sometimes covers a newborn's face. Even her metaphors are midwife metaphors. From that day on, anyone who looks at her sees a shabby peasant woman, not worth talking to, and forgets her the moment she's out of sight. She made herself the gorilla in an experiment, except the experiment is her life, and it never ends, and she's running it on purpose. And this is where the fantasy stops being fantasy for me, because people do this. If you're carried something heavy or loved someone who has, the shape of it, checking out in the middle of conversations, watching your own life like a movie about a stranger, that pane of glass between you and everyone who loves you, getting smaller, speaking less, becoming a background character in your own story. Because some part of you decided the main character doesn't deserve the screen time. Psychologists have been circling this for over a century. A French psychologist named Pierre Janet was writing in the 1880s about how overwhelming experiences get walled off, locked in a room the person can consciously enter, but that quietly runs the house from behind the door. The grieving mother is that idea made playable. Her locked room is the birthing bell. Her invisibility isn't a superpower, it's a sentence. She survived and people she was supposed to protect didn't. So she found the person responsible and gave her the harshest punishment she could invent. You don't get to exist anymore. And the genius of Pillars of Eternity, the reason I think Grieving Mother is one of the best written companions in RPG history, is that the game makes her symptoms yours. You experience her exactly the way she experiences herself, overlooked, unheard, absent for every conversation. Some players finish the game without ever finding her, plenty who do find her cryptic and skip her. And look, as game design, that's a fair complaint. But I can shake the feeling that it's also the point. They wrote a character whose tragedy is easy to miss, and then most of the world missed her. Games have been circling this question. Can you escape yourself by forgetting yourself for decades? And the trail leads through some familiar names. It actually starts with the same writer. In 1999, the same year as the Guerrilla Study, funnily enough, Chris Avellone wrote Planescape Torment, a man who committed a crime so heavy he traded away his own mortality to buy time to atone for it, and found that death after death stripped away his memories. 16 years later, Avellone conceived the Grieving Mother, a nameless man running from his crime, a nameless woman running from hers. Same wound, asked twice. Silent Hill 2 took the other road. James Sunderland buried the memory of what he did to his wife so deep that it takes an entire haunted town built out of his own guilt, monster by monster, to dig it back out of him. Omori might be the closest cousin to the Grieving Mother ever made. A boy who can't face the truth about the day his sister died doesn't just avoid the memory, he builds an entire dream world to live in instead. Candy-colored and warm, with the truth sealed in the dark at the bottom of it. If her call is an illusion woven for everyone else, his headspace is the same illusion woven for an audience of one. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is about a company that will delete your painful memories for a fee, and about what that deletion actually costs. The title comes from a 300-year-old Alexander Pope poem about how peaceful it will be to forget. The world forgetting by the world forgot. Eternal sunshine of the spotless mind. Nietzsche said it even more bluntly. Blessed are the forgetful, for they get the better even of their blunders. Blessed are the forgetful. It's a generally seductive idea. Who hasn't wanted a memory gone? The Grieving Mother is what it looks like when somebody actually receives the blessing. Which brings us to the end of her story. Because after you've walked through her memories with her, after the birthing bell has been dragged back into the light, she comes to you with a request. Wipe it. All of it. The bell, the illusions, the mother who starved. You're a watcher. You have the power. She's asking you to finish the job she started years ago. Complete the erasure. Mercifully, permanently. And the game lets you to do it. So, do you wipe her? Here's what the game says. Erase her memory and the ending slide tells you, pleasant and peaceful memories rose to fill the cracks in her mind. Sounds like a mercy, right? Because she goes back to the birthing bell. The village nearby has emptied into desolation in her absence, and she doesn't know. Thus she began her tireless vigil atop the Hydra, awaiting mothers and children who never came. That's the blessing of the forgetful paid out in full. The guilt is gone, and so is everything the guilt was attached to. Her purpose, her penance, her reason to be anywhere at all. Just a woman on a tower, waiting forever for no one. The erasure doesn't free her, it finishes her. But if you refuse, tell her that what she did was wrong and that she has to carry it, and the game hands her one of the quietest, most devastating endings I know. She goes back to Dirford as a midwife. And when the plague finally ends and the souls come back, she delivers, to the astonishment of the villagers, the first healthy child that village has seen in over a decade. The slide gives her one last line, and it's the whole video in one sentence. With each new birth, she saw a measure of hope restored to the Deerwood, and a measure of grace for her own troubled past. Grace, not absolution, a measure of it. The same hands, the same work, every illusion, every failure, all of it still behind her eyes while she works. She doesn't forget, she gets to continue, and the game is brutally clear that those were the only two options on the table. Carry it and continue, or lose it and lose the last of yourself with it. There was never a version where she got both. A trauma psychiatrist named Bessel van der Kolk wrote that people who survived the unbearable become experts at hiding. Not from the world, but, in his words, they learn to hide from themselves. The grieving mother built the perfect hiding place. It worked so well the world agreed she'd never existed. And it bought her nothing. No peace, no absolution, just year after year of being a ghost at her own funeral. Half the people in that experiment never saw the gorilla, but here's the part of the study nobody quotes. The other half did. Attention is a choice. Seeing people, really seeing them, especially the ones working hardest not to be seen, is a choice. One person made that choice for her, and it turned out to be the difference between disappearing and coming back. She never gets her name back. The game never tells us. Maybe that's the one erasure that couldn't be undone, but she got seen, and that was enough to save her life. Thanks for watching.